It begins with a scream that no one hears. Not the kind that tears through the night in a crowded city, but one swallowed by the Wyoming wind, carried off across the jagged ridges and into the emptiness of the Tetons. Somewhere in that silence, a young woman's breath is stolen from her body, and the perfect picture she painted for the world, sunsets, love, freedom, dissolves into a story of fear, violence, and betrayal. Her name is Gabby Petito. Her killer, Brian Laundrie, the man she loved, the man she trusted with her life. To millions of strangers online, Gabby and Brian were the dream couple, two adventurous souls living out of a white Ford Transit van, documenting their travels with filters, smiles, and hashtags. Van life, nomadic spirit, couple goals. That's what the world saw, but behind the smiles lay a gnawing darkness, one that would devour them both before the summer was over. This is the story of how a carefully curated digital fairytale unraveled into one of the most chilling true crime cases of the decade. A story not told through polished posts, but through panic, bruises, arguments, and the final, fateful decision that cost Gabby her life. The perfect picture. On Instagram, it looked perfect. Gabby's feed was a scrapbook of golden hour light, mountain ridges, and playful kisses with Brian. They seemed inseparable, clinging to each other in every frame, their lives pared down to a van, a camera, and a horizon that never ended. But perfection is a dangerous lie. Because if you looked closer, really closer, you could see the cracks bleeding through the edges of those photos. The smiles didn't always reach Gabby's eyes. The captions, cheerful and light, sometimes hinted at exhaustion. And Brian, often behind the camera, cast a shadow longer than the roads they traveled. Friends would later say Gabby was the light, always trying to keep things positive, while Brian could be moody, controlling, easily angered. Yet she adored him, defended him, and wanted nothing more than to make their dream together work. She was 22, in love, certain she'd found her forever. But love, when tangled with control, becomes a trap. On the road. July 2021, they set off from Long Island, New York, bound for the American West. National parks, deserts, wide open skis. Gabby planned to turn their journey into a travel vlog, a passion project she believed could grow into something bigger. Her family cheered her on, proud of her adventurous spirit. She FaceTimed her mom, Nishal, constantly during those first weeks, beaming with excitement. Every call was filled with stories of hikes, plans, and dreams. But there was also tension, arguments that came out of nowhere. Brian didn't always like her ideas. He disliked when strangers approached Gabby, when she took too long getting ready, when things weren't his way. Still, Gabby smoothed it over. She always smoothed it over. The road stretched on mile after mile. Campgrounds, gas stations, grocery store parking lots, and somewhere along the way the arguments began to escalate. Moab, Utah. August 12, 2021. The heat was blistering in Moab. Tourists crowded the streets. Hikers returned dusty from trails. Amid the chaos, someone dialed 911. The report: a man was hitting a woman. The man, Brian Laundrie. The woman, Gabby Petito. Police bodycam footage later revealed the raw fracture in their relationship. The video is haunting. Gabby, sitting in the passenger seat of their van, sobs uncontrollably. She apologizes over and over, even as her face is flushed, her voice trembling. She blames herself. "I have OCD, I get stressed, I was being mean." Brian, calm, collected, explains his side. He says Gabby hit him first. He shows officers scratches on his arms. He downplays everything. The officers separate them, trying to de-escalate. Gabby looks small, broken, frightened. When asked if Brian hit her, she stammers, avoids eye contact, insists she's fine. Victims of abuse often do. Instead of arresting Brian, the officers decide to separate them for the night. Brian is given a hotel room. Gabby keeps the van. On camera, she seems lost, abandoned. It should have been a turning point, a chance for her to walk away, but instead it became just another chapter in a story spiraling toward tragedy. The cracks widen. For the next 2 weeks, Gabby's contact with her family continued, but something felt off. Her texts became irregular, short, less like her. At one point, she sent her mom a strange message. "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails." Stan was her grandfather. Gabby never called him Stan. It sent a chill down Nishal's spine. Something was wrong. Still, Gabby's Instagram remained active. Pictures of Arches National Park, sunsets, smiles, but the dates didn't always line up. Some posts seemed staged, as if scheduled to maintain the illusion of their perfect journey. And though Gabby's voice was in the captions, some friends wondered if it was really her typing. The couple stopped appearing together in public as often. Strangers at campgrounds would later recall heated arguments, tense silences, slammed van doors in the night. And then silence. The vanishing. August 27, 2021. Jackson, Wyoming. Gabby and Brian were spotted at a restaurant. Staff and patrons described a disturbing scene. Brian argued loudly with waitstaff, stormed out, stormed back in, visibly enraged. Gabby followed behind, apologizing, crying, trying to smooth things over. It was the last confirmed public sighting of her alive. That night, Gabby's mother received her final message: no service in Yosemite. It didn't make sense. Yosemite was hundreds of miles away. By September 1, Brian was back in Florida, alone, driving Gabby's van, silent about where she was. He told no one anything, and when Gabby's family tried to reach him, his phone went dark. His parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, offered no answers, no help. They claimed not to know where Gabby was. But the van was in their driveway. The silence of the Laundries. For 10 days, the Laundrie family said nothing. They offered no explanation for Gabby's absence, no concern for her safety. They refused calls from her parents. They did not return messages. Nishal and Joe Petito, Gabby's parents, were frantic. Their daughter had vanished. They filed a missing persons report. They begged the Laundries for help. None came. To the Petito family, the silence felt like complicity. To investigators, it raised red flags. And to the public, watching the story break across news outlets, social media, and true crime forums, it was infuriating. The dream couple's perfect image had shattered. The world now demanded answers. The search. As days stretched into weeks, Gabby's face appeared everywhere. Posters, headlines, nightly news broadcasts. Her blue eyes, bright smile, blonde hair. It became impossible to look away. Volunteers scoured trails, campgrounds, remote roads across Wyoming and Utah. Tips flooded hotlines. Drone footage, satellite images, police dogs. An entire nation seemed to be looking for Gabby. And all the while, Brian remained silent, hidden inside his parents' home. The Petito family held press conferences, their voices breaking with desperation. "We just want her home," Nishal pleaded. "Please, if you know anything, help us." But the truth was already written in the mountains. The discovery. September 19, 2021. A campsite near Spread Creek dispersed camping area, Wyoming. Searchers found what they were dreading: human remains matching Gabby Petito. The autopsy would confirm what many feared. Cause of death: homicide by manual strangulation. Time of death: 3 to 4 weeks before discovery. She had been left in the wilderness like discarded debris. Alone, silent, her life reduced to a body in the dirt. The world mourned. Strangers wept for a girl they never knew because they had seen her smile, her laughter, her hopes, all shared online. They had seen her light, and now her absence. And suddenly, Brian Laundrie wasn't just a boyfriend. He was the prime suspect in one of the most notorious crimes of the decade. The fugitive. But when police came knocking, Brian was gone. His parents told officers he had gone for a hike in Carlton Reserve, a swampy, alligator-infested park in Florida. They hadn't seen him since. It made no sense. Did he slip away under their noses? Did they help him disappear? The timeline was murky and the laundries weren't talking. For weeks, the search for Brian consumed headlines. Helicopters buzzed over marshlands. Police combed the reserve, finding nothing but snakes and mud. Theories swirled. He had fled the country, he was hiding in tunnels, he was being sheltered by his family. All the while, Gabby's family demanded justice. "He killed our daughter," Joe Petito said flatly, "and he's out there running free." The Notebook. Mycatchy Creek Environmental Park, Florida. Investigators stumbled upon Brian's backpack, a dry bag and a notebook. Nearby, skeletal remains. Dental records confirmed it. Brian Laundrie was dead. Cause: self-inflicted gunshot wound. Inside the notebook, a confession. In shaky handwriting, Brian admitted to killing Gabby, claiming it was out of mercy after she fell and was injured. Few believed that explanation. Most saw it for what it was, an attempt to soften the brutality of what he had done. But the confession left no doubt. Brian had strangled Gabby Petito. The liturgy of fear. And so the story ends where it began, with silence. A young woman's light extinguished in the shadow of the man she trusted most. A family torn apart, a nation transfixed, and a question echoing into the void. How could this happen? Because behind every perfect photo, every filter, every smile, there can be something darker, something twisted, something that cannot be contained by a caption. And in the summer of 2021, in the van life dream that became a nightmare, that darkness took everything. Gabby Petito's story is not just hers. It is a liturgy of fear, a prayer whispered too late, a warning screamed into the wind. A man vanishes into the swamps. A nation watches, breathless, as helicopters slice across the Florida Keys, dogs nose through muck, and the whispers of a killer seem to linger in the humid air. Brian Laundrie, the quiet boy from Northport, the artist sketching skulls and monsters in his notebook, the boyfriend who strangled Gabby Petito, has disappeared into the wilderness. And with his disappearance, the story that began as a love affair turned into a death sentence now shifts into something else. A hunt, a chase, a spectacle where every shadow might conceal his face. This was no longer just a crime. It was a national obsession. The Laundrie family's silence. From the very beginning, suspicion clung to Chris and Roberta Laundrie like swamp mud. When Brian returned to their Florida home on September 1, 2021, alone, driving Gabby's van, they said nothing. He slipped quietly into his bedroom, his backpack heavy, his clothes still carrying the dust of the West. The van sat like an accusation in their driveway, its white panels gleaming beneath the Florida sun. For 10 days, the Laundries refused to answer calls from Gabby's family. Nichelle Schmidt, Gabby's mother, dialed again and again, leaving voicemails begging for answers. Joe Petito, her father, called too, furious, demanding to know where his daughter was. Silence. Even when police arrived at the Laundrie home, Chris and Roberta offered nothing. No timeline, no statements, only the name of a lawyer, Stephen Bertolino. From that moment on, every word came filtered through legal lips. To Gabby's family, it was betrayal. To the public, it was proof. Proof the Laundries knew more than they were saying. Proof they were protecting their son. Proof that justice would be smothered beneath their silence. And when Brian slipped away into the swamp, their silence became deafening. The swamp. Carlton Reserve. 25,000 acres of tangled forest, swampland, and alligator-infested water. A place where even the air feels hostile, where humidity clings to the skin, and the ground swallows footprints in seconds. On September 13, Brian told his parents he was going for a hike in the reserve. They never saw him again, or so they claimed. Within days, police launched a search. Hundreds of officers waded through waist-deep water. Drones buzzed overhead. Cadaver dogs strained at their leashes, nostrils full of the swamp's foul air. For weeks, the reserve was torn apart, but no sign of Brian appeared. And so the theories began. The theories. True crime forums erupted. Was Brian really in the reserve, or had his parents helped him escape? Some believed he had fled south, slipping across the border into Mexico. Others imagined him hiding in the Appalachian Trail, a ghost among the trees. Still others spun conspiracies darker still. That Brian had killed again while on the run, that the laundries were smuggling supplies to him, that he was watching the news unfold with a grin, proud of the chaos he had created. Every blurry photo of a man with a backpack became a headline: possible Brian laundry sighting, a grainy image in Alabama, a hiker's video in North Carolina, a trail cam in Florida. Each one fueled the frenzy. Each one kept the nation hooked. The case was no longer about Gabby. It was about him, the fugitive, the ghost, the shadow slipping just out of reach. The obsession. The Gabby Petito case wasn't the first tragedy to grip America, but it was one of the first to unfold in real time across social media. TikTok detectives dissected the case with forensic zeal. Twitter exploded with speculation, theories, outrage. YouTube channels racked up millions of views by analyzing bodycam footage, dissecting text messages, retracing steps on Google Maps. Every detail mattered. Every frame of Gabby's vlogs was scoured for hidden clues. Every movement of Brian's parents was scrutinized. Strangers knocked on the laundry's front door, chanting, "Where, Gabby?" into the cameras that crowded their lawn. Cable news replayed the same clips on an endless loop. Gabby's smiling face, Brian's stony expression, the white van, the bodycam footage, and then the wilderness, searchers trudging through muck, helicopters slicing the sky. It was America's new obsession, the van life murder mystery. And for Gabby's family, it was torture. Their daughter's death was no longer just grief. It was a spectacle, dissected by strangers, monetized by creators, broadcast to millions. The confession. Inside the swamp, the search dragged on. Weeks turned into months. And then, October 20, 2021. A dry spell lowered the water levels in Carlton Reserve. Police stumbled upon a backpack, a notebook, and skeletal remains. Dental records confirmed the identity: Brian Laundrie. Cause of death: self-inflicted gunshot wound. The nation gasped. The fugitive story ended not with a capture, not with a trial, but with silence. But the notebook, water-stained, pages warped, contained words that would reignite the storm. In it, Brian confessed to killing Gabby. His explanation was haunting in its cruelty. He claimed Gabby had fallen, was in pain, and he ended her suffering. It was a lie no one believed. He had strangled her. The autopsy was clear. It was rage, not mercy, that had killed her. The parents. Even with Brian's death, suspicion lingered over Chris and Roberta. What did they know? When did they know it? Theories swirled that they had helped Brian disappear, that they delayed reporting him missing, that they had shielded him from law enforcement during those crucial days. Lawsuits would later be filed against them by Gabby's family, alleging emotional distress, claiming the laundries knew Gabby was dead and said nothing. Public fury burned hot. Protesters camped outside their home, waving signs, screaming through megaphones. The laundries remained silent, blinds drawn, voices absent. To this day, many believe they knew more than they ever admitted. The aftermath. Gabby's funeral was broadcast to the world. Friends and family gathered, their grief raw, their voices trembling. Nichelle spoke of her daughter's light, her laughter, the way she made people feel alive. Joe Petito begged parents everywhere to hug their children tighter, to never take them for granted. Strangers wept across the country. For weeks, memorials appeared in towns everywhere, candles, flowers, handwritten notes. Gabby had become more than a victim. She was a symbol. But even symbols fade. And as the media frenzy moved on, the Petito family was left with silence, haunted by questions that would never be answered. Why did Gabby stay with him when the signs were there? Why did the police let her go that night in Moab? Why did Brian kill her? And what did his parents know? Questions with no comfort, no resolution. A mirror of culture. The case revealed something dark about society, too. Why Gabby? Why this case? Why did her face become the one plastered across every headline, while hundreds of other missing women, especially women of color, remained ignored? Critics pointed to missing white woman syndrome, the media's obsession with young, attractive, white female victims while neglecting countless others. Gabby's story mattered, but so did the stories of those who never got a headline, never got a hashtag. The Petito family themselves acknowledged this, launching a foundation to help other missing persons cases gain attention. In their grief, they tried to turn their daughter's tragedy into a force for change. But still, the obsession lingered on Gabby and on Brian. The monster in the mirror. What makes a killer? Brian Laundrie wasn't a serial murderer. He wasn't a hardened criminal. He wasn't even a man with a known violent record. He was an artist, a traveler, a young man whose sketchbooks revealed dark, twisted imagery. He was moody, controlling, prone to anger. He was insecure. And in that insecurity, he became dangerous. The signs were there: the jealousy, the controlling behavior, the arguments, the violence that strangers glimpsed on highways and in restaurants. But Gabby believed in him, believed in love, believed things would get better. Instead, she believed her way into her grave. And Brian, coward, murderer, fugitive, believed his way into a swamp, where the only justice he faced was his own hand on a trigger. The liturgy of fear. The story of Gabby Petito is not just a crime. It is a liturgy of fear, a reminder whispered into every relationship that control is not love, that silence can kill, that smiles on social media can mask bruises no one sees. It is a story about a young woman who dreamed of freedom, but found herself trapped in the grip of a man who saw her not as a partner, but as possession. And it is a story about a nation, addicted to tragedy, obsessed with spectacle, that watched it unfold like a TV drama, forgetting, perhaps, that at its heart was a girl, flesh and blood, whose laughter once filled rooms and whose dreams ended in the silence of the Wyoming wilderness. The story should have ended with Brian Laundrie's body rotting in the swamp, his skull lying in mud beside the pistol he used to silence himself. But death is not the same thing as closure, and for Gabby Petito's family, there was no neat ending. Instead, her story continued to spread outward like ripples in black water, touching everything it passed, forcing questions that no one wanted to answer. America had been given its villain, but what it truly received was a mirror, and what that mirror reflected was not only the violence of one young man, but the failings of a culture that allowed the violence to grow unchecked until it consumed them both. The lawsuits came first. Gabby's parents, broken but unwilling to stay silent, turned their grief into rage. They filed civil suits against Chris and Roberta Laundrie, accusing them of knowing Gabby was already dead when they ignored the frantic calls from her mother and father. They accused them of cruelty, of inflicting emotional distress, of hiding behind legal advice while their daughter's body lay abandoned in the dirt of Wyoming. The Laundries denied everything, but to the public they were already convicted, not by a court, but by their refusal to speak when it mattered most. Protesters camped outside their house for months, holding signs, shouting at closed blinds. Even years later, neighbors spoke of them like ghosts who lived in their own neighborhood, walking shadows who carried the unbearable stain of what their son had done. The lawsuit stretched on, but so did the cultural obsession. News networks replayed footage of Gabby and Brian's smiling van life videos beside his waterlogged confession. weaving the story into a narrative about love gone wrong, about the dangers of social media facades, about the fragility of relationships that look perfect on camera but rot in silence when the lens is turned away. True crime podcasts analyzed every second of police bodycam footage from that August night in Moab, asking again and again how officers failed to see the danger written across Gabby's face. She had scratches, she was crying, she admitted that he had grabbed her, yet they separated the couple only for a night and let them continue their trip. Days later, she was dead. The haunting part of the footage wasn't just the tension between them, but the way Gabby tried to protect Brian even then. She blamed herself. She apologized. She explained away his anger as stress, as frustration. It was a chilling echo of countless abuse survivors, bending reality to protect the one who was already destroying them. Millions of viewers saw it, and millions recognized themselves in her trembling words. That recognition became part of the obsession too. Gabby wasn't just a victim, she was a symbol, a stand-in for every woman who had minimized her own bruises, for every person who had said, "It was my fault," when they knew deep down it was. Her death sparked something larger, something America had been avoiding. Conversations about domestic violence erupted, about the signs that get ignored, about the ways friends and family often dismiss controlling behavior as love. Police departments were scrutinized for how they handled domestic calls. Lawmakers debated whether the system needed reform. Yet in the same breath, entertainment companies packaged her tragedy into docuseries. YouTube creators churned out monetized theories, and TikTok detectives built entire followings on solving her case after it was already solved. Grief became content, and Gabby became both a cautionary tale and a commodity. The Petito family tried to push against that, to reclaim her memory. They launched the Gabby Petito Foundation, using donations to support families of other missing persons and victims of domestic violence. In interviews, they spoke not just about their daughter, but about the hundreds of other daughters who never became a headline. They pointed to the glaring imbalance in coverage, what critics called missing white woman syndrome, that ensured Gabby's story dominated the news cycle while indigenous women went missing in Wyoming with barely a mention. It was a bitter irony. The family's pain became the catalyst for broader awareness, but they were also forced to acknowledge that part of the reason Gabby's case became an obsession was because of how she looked, because of who she was, because she fit the mold of a story America wanted to consume. Meanwhile, the image of Brian Laundrie continued to mutate. He was no longer just a fugitive or a killer. He became a symbol of cowardice, of toxic control, of the boy next door who hides rot beneath a pleasant smile. His notebooks, filled with macabre drawings and rambling justifications, were dissected like holy texts of violence. Some framed him as a monster, others as a pathetic figure who could not face the consequences of his own actions. But the truth was simpler and darker. He was ordinary, and that was what made him terrifying. He was not a serial killer, not a mastermind, not a man with a long history of crime. He was an insecure boyfriend with a temper, and that was enough to destroy someone's life. Even the geography of the case became haunted. The spread of locations formed a grim map. The Utah desert where police stopped them, the Tetons where her body was found, the Florida swamps where he ended his life. People made pilgrimages to the sites, leaving flowers, filming TikToks, whispering as though standing at graves. The Tetons in particular became a shrine, a place where hikers left painted rocks and notes for Gabby, where strangers wept for a girl they never knew. In the cold mountain air, her story lingered like a ghost. Years later, the case still reverberated. Families of missing persons cited Gabby's name when pleading for attention. Survivors of domestic abuse wrote online that seeing her story gave them courage to leave before it was too late. But alongside those moments of change was something darker, an obsession with consuming tragedy for entertainment, as though each true crime case was a series to binge, each victim a character whose suffering existed for someone else's thrill. Gabby's story revealed the worst of Brian, but it also revealed something unsettling about us. The public moved on to other tragedies, but every so often Gabby's face would return in headlines, an update on a lawsuit, a new documentary, another anniversary. Each time, her parents spoke softly into microphones, their grief as sharp as the day they buried her. Nichelle Schmidt once said she still expected to get a text from her daughter sometimes, as if Gabby were just late checking in on her trip. Joe Petito said he still wakes up in the night hearing her laugh, only to realize it was a dream. Their pain never became content. It remained raw, real, and endless. The story of Gabby Petito does not end neatly because stories like hers never do. The questions remain unkillable. Could the police have saved her? Did the laundries help Brian escape? Why didn't anyone do more when the signs were there? Theories multiply, but answers never arrive. The silence of the laundries, the cowardice of Brian, the endless chatter of strangers, all of it circles like vultures around the truth that can never be undone. A young woman's life was taken, and the world turned it into a performance. The shadow of her story lingers in the American consciousness like a ghost, haunting, restless, unfinished. It is the whisper in every new case, the reminder in every news cycle that behind the hashtags and headlines are people who bleed and people who mourn. Gabby's story is not only a warning, not only a tragedy, it is a liturgy of fear, written in vanishing ink across the faces of every smiling couple who point their phones at the world and say, "Look how perfect we are." And perhaps that is the cruelest truth of all. Perfection is the mask that hides the monster, and by the time the mask slips, it is already too late. In the end, the story does not fade quietly, because stories like this never do. They stay suspended in time, stitched into the culture like a wound that refuses to heal. Gabby Petito's face remains frozen in photographs, her laughter preserved in clips of vlogs that no longer feel innocent, her name spoken like a prayer in households that never knew her but grieved as if they did. And across from her always, the shadow of Brian Laundrie, the boy who loved her, the boy who killed her, the boy who walked into the swamp with a gun and decided that silence would be his last word. Yet even his silence echoes, because death did not erase the questions. Her parents still wake each day to a house that feels too quiet, to a phone that will never buzz with her voice again, to birthdays that pass like empty rituals. They turn on the television and see strangers dissecting her life, true crime hosts drawing profit from her suffering, documentaries packaging her death as entertainment. It is both comfort and cruelty. Her story remembered, her legacy expanded, but her humanity too often stripped away, turned into spectacle. For every foundation created, for every law debated, there is still the aching reality that Gabby was only 22 years old and wanted nothing more than to see the world, to live, to love. That dream ended not on a road or in a van, but beneath the Wyoming sky, breath crushed from her lungs by the hands of the man she trusted most. And for America, the story lingers as a mirror. It is a reflection of how violence hides in plain sight, of how charm and control can wear the same face, of how a culture obsessed with perfect images can blind itself to the cracks showing underneath. It is also a reflection of us, the audience, who devoured the tragedy, who scrolled, who speculated, who made her pain part of our daily feed. We mourned her, yes, but we consumed her too. There is no closure, not truly. The swamp is quiet now, the Tetons still rise against the sky, the van sits locked away as evidence. Yet in every smile shared online, in every couple posting perfection, there is a faint whisper of warning. Not everything beautiful is safe, not every love is love, and not every story ends the way it looks in pictures. Gabby Petito's story is not only about what was done to her, but about what we choose to see, and what we choose to ignore, until it is far too late.